the impossible giants of the sea. They rise from the sea like floating skyscrapers, vast, gleaming, impossibly heavy, each weighing more than 200,000 tons, yet somehow they float. These are the largest moving structures humans have ever built. And while they look effortless on the water's surface, every inch of their design fights against one simple truth, that anything this heavy should sink. So how does this miracle of modern engineering actually work? How does a city of steel and glass, with swimming pools, theaters, and thousands of people, stay perfectly balanced on the open ocean? To understand how cruise ships float, we first have to understand what they are. These ships are not just boats. They are floating cities. The largest of them, like Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas, stretches over 200 feet long, longer than the Eiffel Tower laid on its side. They carry more than 7,000 people, weigh as much as 80,000 elephants, and yet, despite their unimaginable mass, they glide across the water as gently as a feather. At first glance, it seems impossible. But the answer begins with a principle discovered over 2,000 years ago, by a man taking a bath. According to legend, when the Greek scientist Archimedes stepped into his bath, he noticed the water rise around him and realized something revolutionary. The water was pushing back. That push, he discovered, was a force. The buoyant force, equal to the weight of the water displaced by his body. If the upward push of that water equals or exceeds the object's weight, it floats. If not, it sinks. Archimedes' discovery became one of the cornerstones of physics, and every ship, from a tiny sailboat to a 250,000-ton cruise liner, relies on that same invisible law. So how does a cruise ship beat gravity? It's not about making it lighter. It's about manipulating volume. A cruise ship's hull is carefully shaped like a giant bowl, hollow and filled mostly with air. Even though the steel is heavy, the enormous volume of air trapped inside makes the average density of the entire ship less than the density of seawater. Think of it this way. Solid block of steel sinks immediately, but shape that same steel into a hollow form, and suddenly it floats. It's not magic, it's physics. When a cruise ship enters the ocean, it pushes aside or displaces a massive amount of water. That displaced water pushes back upward with an equal force. And when that upward force equals the ship's weight, it floats perfectly. This delicate balance between gravity pulling down and buoyancy pushing up is what keeps the world's largest ships alive on the sea. Let's break it down with real numbers. A typical mega cruise ship might weigh around 20,000 tons. That's about 440 million pounds. To stay afloat, it must displace an equal weight of seawater. Since 1 cubic meter of seawater weighs roughly 1.025 tons, the ship must push aside more than 214,000 cubic meters of water just to float. That's the equivalent of an Olympic swimming pool, multiplied by 85. Every inch of the ship's draft, the part below the waterline, represents thousands of tons of displacement. Too shallow, and the ship rides too high and becomes unstable. Too deep, and it risks striking the seabed or wasting fuel. So naval architects design the hull to find a perfect balance, enough water displaced to float securely, but not so much that it drags like an anchor. The hull's shape is everything. From the curve of the bow to the taper of the stern, every contour determines how water flows around it, how efficiently it moves, how much drag it creates, and how it stays stable in rough seas. That strange bulb under the front, called the bulbous bow, might look odd, but it's a masterpiece of hydrodynamic design. It reduces drag, cuts through waves more smoothly, and even helps maintain buoyancy at speed. In motion, the entire hull acts like a dynamic system, not just floating, but riding the water, adjusting constantly to pressure and flow. It's a ballet of physics on a planetary scale. But buoyancy alone isn't enough. Because staying afloat is one thing and staying upright is another. And that's where the real science of balance begins. Every second a cruise ship is afloat. Two invisible forces are locked in perfect opposition. Gravity pulls it down, buoyancy pushes it up, and somewhere in the middle, deep inside the ship's steel heart, lies the secret to balance. The center of gravity is where the ship's total weight acts, all its steel, furniture, engines, and passengers. The center of buoyancy is where the upward push of displaced water acts. When those 2 points are perfectly aligned, the ship stands upright, but tilt the ship, and everything changes. As the ship tilts, the center of buoyancy shifts, creating a righting moment, a natural push that tries to return the ship upright. This invisible lever is what keeps a cruise ship from capsizing when the ocean turns against it. It's a delicate equilibrium, maintained by brilliant design and constant adjustment. Below the passenger decks, far beneath the restaurants and pools, lies the ship's unseen counterweight system, the ballast tanks. These tanks can be filled with seawater to balance the ship's weight. When wind, waves, or uneven loading tilt the vessel, the crew can pump water into specific tanks to restore equilibrium. It's like a massive, controlled balancing act, using tons of seawater as liquid ballast. The ship is never truly still. It's always adjusting, always fighting for equilibrium. This constant dance between buoyancy and ballast is what gives cruise ships their legendary steadiness, even in rough seas. But what happens when nature doesn't play fair? When a 200,000-ton ship meets the power of an ocean storm, cruise ships are designed to withstand 40-foot waves and 80-mile-per-hour winds, forces that would destroy most structures on land. Their survival comes down to one key factor: stability reserve. As a ship tilts, the distance between its center of gravity and center of buoyancy, called the metacentric height, determines how strongly it resists capsizing. The larger the distance, the stronger the ship's self-righting ability. If the ship heels too far, that restoring force weakens. But modern cruise ships are built with immense stability margins. In tests, they can tilt up to 35 degrees and still return upright without losing balance. Behind that confidence lies thousands of hours of simulation and testing, in laboratories, computer models, and wave basins, all to ensure the ship can endure the ocean's fury. But balance isn't just about staying afloat. It's also about staying comfortable. For passengers, even a few degrees of roll can mean the difference between a relaxing cruise and a seasick nightmare. To smooth the ride, engineers equipped modern ships with massive SST stabilizer fins, each the size of a school bus. These fins extend from the hull and pivot automatically, countering the roll of waves in real time. Sensors detect motion hundreds of times per second, and hydraulic systems adjust the fin's angle to generate lift, pushing against the sea like underwater wings. The result? A ship that cuts through waves with the poise of a ballet dancer, and passengers who barely notice the storm outside. On today's cruise ships, stability isn't just mechanical, it's digital. Advanced computers constantly calculate the ship's balance, trim, and buoyancy distribution. These systems take in data from dozens of sensors, tracking everything from fuel load to passenger movement, ensuring the ship remains perfectly trimmed. If 1,000 guests rush to the pool deck for sail away, the system notices the weight shift and subtly compensates with ballast or stabilizer adjustments. It's balance, managed by mathematics. A cruise ship isn't just floating, but it's moving constantly, turning, accelerating, slowing down. Every movement changes how forces act upon it. When the ship turns, centrifugal forces try to pull it sideways, but designers predict this and shape the hull to resist it. Water pressure, buoyancy, and hull geometry all work together to keep the vessel steady, even while carving massive arcs across the ocean. The ocean may be chaotic, but a modern cruise ship is engineered to tame that chaos. Every tilt, every roll, every correction, all part of an elegant, unseen choreography between man and sea. When the ocean rages, it reminds us that floating isn't guaranteed, it's earned through design, precision, and constant vigilance. Every cruise ship that crosses the ocean carries the legacy of centuries of human ingenuity. From Archimedes' bathtub to AI-driven stabilizers, what once seemed impossible to make steel dance on water, it is now our everyday reality. Yet beneath that calm surface lies one final marvel. The ability of these giants not just to float, but to thrive even as the ocean changes. Each new generation of cruise ships pushes the limits of engineering further than the last. Bigger, smarter, greener. What began as vessels of steel and steam has evolved into floating ecosystems, miniature, cities powered by the science of buoyancy and balance, the icon of the seas, the world's largest. Cruise ship weighs nearly 250,000 tons, yet it floats with the same effortless grace as a leaf on a pond. Inside, its technology manages more than just comfort. It manages the delicate physics that keep it afloat. Today's cruise ships don't just rely on buoyancy, they rely on innovation. Massive LNG engines, running on liquefied natural gas, power both propulsion and electric systems with unprecedented efficiency. Under the waterline, azipod thrusters rotate 360 degrees, allowing ships to maneuver with surgical precision. No rudders, no anchors, just electric pods, each the size of a bus, turning 200,000 tons of steel on a dime. It's all part of a silent revolution, the transformation of floating cities into intelligent, self-stabilizing ecosystems. But as these giants grow, so does the responsibility that comes with them. Cruise ships are no longer judged only by their luxury, but by their impact. Modern naval architects are designing ships that float not only by science, but by conscience. New hull coatings reduce drag and save fuel. Air lubrication systems release millions of microscopic bubbles under the hull, letting the ship glide with less resistance. And hybrid power systems, even hydrogen fuel cells, are being tested to keep these floating cities clean and quiet for generations to come. The science of floating hasn't changed since Archimedes stepped into his bath, but how we apply that science is being rewritten every year. In the 21st century, buoyancy is no longer left to chance or instinct. It's governed by algorithms. Cruise ships now use AI-driven stability systems that predict how the vessel will move hours in advance. By analyzing ocean swells, passenger movement, and even wind pressure, these systems fine-tune ballast and stabilizers before the human crew ever notices a shift. The result: balance, optimized by intelligence. Floating perfected by computation. Inside the ship, tranquility. Outside, chaos. Between them, the unbroken chain of data that keeps 200,000 tons of metal suspended in motionless calm. When night falls at sea, the illusion is complete. A floating city, lights twinkling like stars, drifts across the dark horizon. But even as passengers sleep, the ship's systems remain awake. Computers whisper to pumps. Stabilizers shift in tiny increments. Sensors monitor pressure, trim, and depth. Every heartbeat of the ship is measured and logged. It's easy to forget that this calm depends on an unending fight against physics, gravity's pull versus the ocean's push. Each moment, afloat is a triumph of balance, precision, and trust. For all the technology, equations, and systems at work, the heart of every cruise ship is still human. Thousands of people live and work on board, each depending on that unseen science beneath their feet. Every coffee served, every laugh shared, every sunrise watched, all made possible because of a 2,000-year-old principle, and the human genius that turned it into an art. The science of floating is really the science of trust, trusting that what we've built will hold us, even when the sea rises against us. Archimedes could never have imagined this, his simple discovery. The balance between weight and water now carries millions of people across the globe each year. Steel and gravity, air and sea, all locked in eternal balance. It's an equation written not on paper, but in motion, tested by storms, refined by time, perfected by design. From the tragedies that taught us humility to the triumphs that redefined travel, every floating ship tells the same story, the story of humans daring to trust the sea. So the next time you stand on a cruise deck and look out at the endless horizon, remember beneath your feet, the ocean is pushing back with a force equal to everything. You are standing on that invisible hand. The buoyant force holds millions of lives aloft every day, the perfect harmony between nature's laws and human imagination. In the end, a cruise ship doesn't defy gravity. It partners with the sea, a 200,000-ton symphony floating not by magic but by mastery.